We now go to the gentlelady from Illinois, Ms. Duckworth.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Gentlemen, thank you for your bravery in being here today and for your service to our nation. I really believe that the best way to honor the sacrifice of Ambassador Stevens and the 3 other Americans who gave their lives in the line of duty in a final act of devotion to this nation, the best thing that we can do is to put aside politics and take a hard look at the facts of what went wrong and what we need to do as we move forward to make sure this never, ever happens again. And I share the frustration that many of my colleagues have expressed about the fact that we did not have the opportunity to properly prepare for your testimony today or to participate in a bipartisan investigation. You know, I want to take a look particularly at what we can do to strengthen our missions, particularly in parts of the world where we cannot rely on host governments to provide adequate security, what we need to do to strengthen our ability to protect our outposts. As you've mentioned already, this includes better security measures and more U.S. security personnel. Mr. Hicks, you had said that regarding the ARB's recommendations that you thought it was incomplete, that the recommendations were unbalanced in favor of, I think you said, building higher walls, pouring more concrete, and that it was insufficiently strong in recommending that the State Department personnel needed to have more and better training, which is what you started to respond to my colleague from Wisconsin, Mr. Procan. Could you elaborate further on what you believe needs to be done with improvements in training?
Again, the point I made is that those of us whose job is to engage the local population, to represent America to local populations, we have to be able to go outside. We have to be able to meet them in their own places, especially in a part of the world where hospitality is a major part of the culture, and where also the demonstration of personal courage is an important part of the culture. So that means that we have to, as individuals, those of us who go outside, have to be able to be cognizant of the situations that we're going into. We have to be situationally aware, I think, as Eric would say, in order to recognize in advance that we may be getting into a difficult situation, and we need to be able to respond appropriately. And if we are put in a situation of extremis, then we have to also have the ability to be able to protect ourselves in that situation.
Thank you. Mr. Nordstrom, I know that you didn't not have a chance to answer, elaborate on my colleague's question. What is your opinion? Because I really want to make sure that we get the lessons learned from this. You know, is there a balance that could be struck between focusing on improvements to physical security and also focusing on improvements to training, as Mr. Hicks suggested, or maybe dynamic communications? Do you have any specific recommendations?
Is a perfect one. You know, my concern is that in the wake of an attack, we're going to go through the same cycle that we've gone through all the time. More money is not always the solution. More is not always the solution. Better is the solution. During the process, I had somebody ask me as part of the ARB why had I not requested machine guns, 50 caliber machine guns for the consulate in Benghazi. I was awestruck. I said, if we are to the point where we have to have machine gun nests at a diplomatic institution, isn't there a larger question, what are we doing? Why do we have staff there? You know, one of the recommendations that I've looked at is, again, it's decision-making processes. That doesn't cost money. One of the things that we saw, again, is what is the role of DS? Is DS, diplomatic security, elevated high enough within the Department of State's organizational structure whereby recommendations that are within that organization are heard by the Secretary of State? I mean, I think she has a very reasonable assertion that some of these issues weren't brought to her attention. Well, how do we fix that so that they aren't brought to the attention of the Secretary of State? It's not lost on me that as the unheeded messenger this time around, I look at where those messages seem to stop. The Undersecretary for Management. I look back and I see the last time we had a major attack was East Africa. Mr. Thompson's talked about it. Who was in that same position when the unheeded messengers of the ambassador in Nairobi and the RSO in Nairobi were raising those concerns? It just so happens it's the same person. The Undersecretary for Management was in that same role before. So if anybody should understand this, I would hope that he would. So that's why I'm going to the point of there's something apparently wrong with the process of how those security recommendations are raised to the Secretary.
I agree. I think that you've given us a great way forward. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. I thank the gentlelady.